yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'm a bit scared because it's your favorite topic. So I would try to, in the next 25-30 minutes, to address with you the complex issue of giving bicarbonate to someone in the ICU in 2012. It's a rather controversial issue. And we have loads of animal data, loads of observational study, but so few prospective randomized study. So, anyway, I will try to address the issue in the next 25-30 minutes. So, we need to speak about the scope of the debate in 2012. What about bicarbonate and for which type of ICU acidosis we should regard this? Can bicarbonate counterbalance the acid flux wave during trauma, as we saw this afternoon, of maybe sepsis, something else? What are the risks of giving boluses of bicarbonate? That may be more tricky to try to know. So, when, how, and in which form should we give it, if we plan to give it, and some conclusion. So, the whole issue, I guess, is to say, should we remain at the stage of 720? Maybe. Or should we go further to 7? Like a recent North American survey showed that 2/3 of the practitioners were using only this when the pH was below 7.0. So, let's see. If we stick on the surviving sepsis campaign of 2008, there was some question about this, and they came out with this assertion that we should consider whenever hypoperfusion is occurring in sepsis patient, perhaps using bicarbonate when the pH is below, 7.15. But evidence level very weak, 1B. So, is this some way to go with? Or maybe we should look a bit further down to say, well, what about the patient when they have the pH below 7.15 and even perhaps 7? So, let's address all this. So, some word about the mechanistic cause of lactic acidosis. You know this better than I do, I'm sure. So, increased production, type A lactic acidosis, inadequate oxygen delivery and utilization. Maybe more interesting, impaired clearance, type B lactic acidosis. Everyone knows that the liver is the big responsible for this, 50%. Maybe more interestingly, the kidney is about able to retrieve 30% of this. Not bad. So if you are having a patient with both of the two down, well, it's pretty bad, I guess. So, if we go back to the inadequate oxygen flow distribution, well, you better know than I do the shock, but maybe more interesting is the regional ischemia before the onset of shock. Maybe a more tricky issue to get. So, mesenteric ischemia, you know better than I do, when you get all together without blood pressure very low, lactate plus phosphate, especially when phosphate tends to hang around and increase even if you do CRT, pretty good sign of mesenteric ischemia because phosphate is a purely intracellular ion. So, keep an eye on this. If we go further, and we're still looking for regional sources, and even with a normal CT scan, abdominal CT scan, still might be worth to open the abdomen, and you will find, in some case, but surgeon knows this better than I do. Okay, more interestingly perhaps, drugs interfering with oxidative phosphorylation, metformin, very known case, pretty bad pH, 6.8, and the patient is still, going through CRT because the lactate acidose from metformin is pretty good prognosis, really a kind of exception. CO intoxication known, propofol not so known, but still worth to say. So impaired lactate clearance, we spoke already about this. This one is maybe more tricky. SIRS with normal hemodynamic status. Early sepsis, severe sepsis without hemodynamic deterioration. And then we know, well, there are some circulating inflammatory mediators. And, well, what can they do to the liver, which is the major organ to try to remove some lactate? Well, they change the liver to an organ which usually extracts lactate to one which is now producing excessive load of lactate. So lactic acidosis without any hemodynamical deterioration, especially in sepsis. So still a bit unknown, but worth to discuss. Now, whenever we speak about acidosis in a patient, we need to speak about the pool of the hydrogen ion that we have in the human body. So I'm just taking a very well-known example of sodium. And when you are looking for the pool of sodium, you say, well, total body pool of sodium, 140 milliequivalent times 60%, body weight usually 70 kilo. That's gonna do, well, 6,000 mEq. Well, quite big. As the first speaker of the afternoon did say about neurotrauma, nowadays very popular, let's try to give to someone with an increased coronary hypertension 150 ml of 3% saline. Quite a lot. Only giving 80 milliequivalent of sodium to the patient, not that much. I said 250, not 1 liter. So, when you see, well, sodium level should be modified, is it due to a flux? Maybe not. It probably has to do with pools, water pools, most of the time. Okay, come back to hydrogen ion. So we believe pH is the thing that we have to follow. Nice to know. We believe maybe there is some, in the stem, some central control of the pH. Well, pH is a pure construction of physiologists at the beginning of the previous century. In fact, the human body doesn't know anything about pH. What he knows is the concentration of hydrogen ion, pretty low, 40 nanomole per liter, both intra and extracellular. And the pool, if you just translate in milliequivalent, is really so tiny, 0.01 milliequivalent. Okay. Whenever you have a boost, and you are just trying to get your bus, and you have some stress, you could have an increase of 10-fold of this already. And when you have sepsis trauma, you can produce about several hundred milliequivalent of hydrogen ion in one boost. So very important. So important that they had to do this in logarithm. So the human body is not sticking on pH, but it's sticking on the concentration of hydrogen ion. 40 for 7.4, 63 for 7.2, 100 for 7. This is the one that he's looking for. And we are lucky in the human body. We have pretty good buffer system that can increase dramatically the effective pool about 1000 mEq. Not bad for such a tiny concentration. So, whenever this pool is abnormal, and we think that lactic acidosis is due to shock, the problem is really due to high hydrogen flux, not the pool itself. When we know the acidosis hangering for several days, weeks, and it's probably a loss of bicarbonate somewhere, GI fistula, whatever, and then we know it's a buffer pool. Okay. Do we have some kind of tools to try to address this, to make the difference between some flux, a new acid coming into the system like ketoacidosis, intoxication, whatever, citrate, or a loss of bicarbonate by a fistula by renal acidosis. So we used to have the anion gap, which normally detect quite well the new acid coming into the system. The Stewart approach may be more accurate. So taking in part the strong ion difference between the strong ion in the blood, then trying to titrating the pH also with phosphate and albumin. But not so useful really in critical care setting unless for hyperchloremic acidosis when you give boost of normal saline to a patient. Okay, so is really bicarbonate doing the trick, a bolus of bicarbonate, to try to counteract the lactic acid production, so 100 megs per hour, even more sometimes. Just trying some tiny boost of bicarbonate, 50 milliequivalent per ampoules, 1 megs per milliliter. You could give 3, 4, 5, even more. It doesn't really change the whole issue. So, mind that the use of buffers will never keep up and always perhaps fails under this condition. So, which condition could benefit from this? As I said before, some loss of bicarbonate, either due to renal tuberculosis, GI fistula, then maybe it's doing the trick. Okay, now, maybe the most important slide of my talk. Do we have some side effect by giving bicarbonate, especially bolus bicarbonate, to someone in ICU? Well, let's see. First one, the so-called paradoxical intracellular acidosis. So you're giving some bicarbonate to the patient, and it's really directly binding with the hydrogen ion, so your pH is rising. You're happy. Fantastic. We cure the patient. Beautiful. But after, we have to think about the cells. So rapidly in the plasma, it's transforming in water and CO2. Water and CO2 goes directly through the membrane. We are in the cell now. Okay. The cell completely different. They just go the other way around, producing this hydrogen ion and the HCO3 So this time you have an acidosis. You are increasing the acidosis of the cell. So it's a kind of fantastic cosmetic effect. You're taking your blood gas. Marvelous. The pH is improving in the plasma, but it's going to be terrible for the cell. They may be dying at the same time, so we have to think about this. Some other side effect, perhaps. If you are thinking about an ampoule of bicarbonate, 50 milliequivalent, that's going to be about 1 liter of CO2 to blast out of the patient. I mean, it's maybe quite huge. So let's think about giving it in 5 minutes. So 1 liter of CO2. And so, if you calculate, you have to nearly doubling the alveolar ventilation with your ventilator. Maybe not so easy to do. You say, I want a direct effect on the plasma here. Want to give it in 1 minute. Okay. So the production of CO2.2, and you're giving about 1 liter of CO2 in 1 minute. So you have to increase 5-fold the mechanical ventilation of your patient. Gosh, that's going to be bad for the trauma and whatever you could think. So this is also something to think about. Lastly, and shown mainly in animal study, whenever you are giving a bolus of bicarbonate, locally but also for a few minutes, you have very high local level of PCO2 in the blood, transiting into the lung, the heart, and perfusing the coronary artery. Cardiac myocytes don't like this at all, and they were showing in many animal studies decreased myocardial contractility, even some animals, cardiac arrest. So, something to about it, surely. So, clinical evidence, prospective randomized study. So far, only 2, very small, dramatic. 24 patients in total, 10 in one, 14 in another one. These 2 papers already, some whole paper. What does the result show? Well, no difference in morbidity or mortality, no difference in cardiac output or mean arterial pressure, and this is all true for patients even with a pH below 7.15. The increase in pH was very transient, 30 minutes. And you say, well, if I increase the pH, normally my catecholamine, my inotropic support, my vasopressor support should be better, because it's been shown that the inotropic effect is improving whenever you have an increase in pH. But no luck. By giving bicarbonate, you are decreasing by 10% the ionized calcium. So you completely blunt the so-called positive effect of sensitivization of your catecholamine. So no effect at all. Pretty bad. Okay. So whenever we are thinking about should we stick on a pH of 7 first, and what kind of bicarbonate should we give? So should we choose for a bolus? I show you that we have several side effects, at least 3 very dangerous ones. So maybe we should go for a more, let's say, slowly gentle procedure, maybe CRT. We know that we can start CRT in AKI whenever the patient is hemodynamically unstable. I will come back to this tomorrow. And it's important to choose a replacement fluid because it's been shown that citrate may increase the strong ion gap and perhaps acidosis. But if you use a low concentration of dilute citrate, 0.5%, 80 millimole per liter, is not the case. But more importantly, if you give a bolus of bicarbonate, concentration is 1 mg per milliliter. If you are giving through CRT, in your substitution fluid is about 25 to 40 milliequivalent in 1 liter. That's give about 0.05 milliequivalent per milliliter. So concentration is much lower. Process is much more gentle. Normally it should be perhaps better. So, whenever you are having this patient with a huge lactic acidosis, you can never say CRT will fix everything. If your patient is still having an increased level of lactate, you will never could really decrease lactate level with CRT. But if you are able to fix this problem initially of lactic acidosis, CRT might be seen as a bridge to get over the resuscitation period and perhaps to improve the final status of the patient. Now, carbicarb, valid option. So, it's a mixture 50-50 of D-sodium carbonate, sodium carbonate, and tris hydroxymethyl aminomethane, so-called TAM. And the idea is to neutralize acidity without generation of CO2. Pretty good idea, but so far, no single study has shown any benefit at all, unfortunately. So, we agree with this recommendation from the Surviving Sepsis campaign, but I think we should probably stick to the last Hensing recommendation in 2012, saying that we should wait until the pH is 7. So, Mr. Chairman, I may try to go to some conclusion and perhaps take a message. And I was trying to make the point that the human body is not reacting on pH. Doesn't know anything about pH construction. He really cares about concentration of hydrogen ion. That's about what everything is counting. And probably the seawater approach is important. So, if we want to correct the pH as a cosmetic improvement in the plasma, we are worsening the situation in the cells. And where it counts is in the cells, obviously, not in the plasma. Okay. So, we should avoid bicarbonate bolus because of many side effects, at least 3, paradoxical cellular acidosis, boost of CO2, and increased CO2 that may be damaging for the heart. No single randomized study up to today is supporting this treatment in 2012. Okay, we should follow, I think, the recent, guideline of the ANZIC Society, and we should probably go for CRT instead of going for bolus of bicarbonate. If we want, at some point, perhaps less than 7, go with some bicarbonate along. Thank you so much for your kind attention.